Okay, it's almost time for everybody to hop on for today's broadcast. It is exactly 3:30 p.m. So, hey Tuesday. Thank you so much for hopping on. I know it's kind of like a weird time depending upon where you live. So the first hangout I did was on Sunday evening, which was like perfect for California, Pacific Standard Time folks, and then a little late for the East Coast. So today I thought I would do one a little earlier for California, and a little probably more of a normal time on the East Coast. And if you're in Hawaii or somewhere in middle America, it's probably like a weird time for you too. But the beauty of these YouTube events is that you can watch them on replay. So if you're not with me live, you're not even hearing me say this, you'll be able to go to the link because you registered, and you'll be able to see not only tonight's replay, but the last one that I did on Sunday. If you were busy watching Ryan Gosling sweep it up at the Golden Globes, my little boyfriend, he doesn't know it, but I think everybody else does. So, hi, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Cassie. I am a fitness professional based in normally sunny Southern California. Although today, actually right now, I do see a tiny bit of blue sky, but not a lot. It has been kind of a rainy January, which is so unusual for us. We usually get at least 1 or 2 hot spells, like really hot, like put on a bathing suit hot. But not this year. It's been probably what it's supposed to be like, which is cool and rainy. So I am based in Newport Beach, California. I am a fitness and health professional. And like, if you want to know the exact title, I am a certified Pilates instructor, indoor cycling instructor, personal trainer, and I'm also a nutritious life certified holistic health practitioner. Blah, 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 blah. So many official terms, but really what I am is your biggest cheerleader. And I am here to teach you everything that I know about living a WOW life, which WOW stands for the Wheel of Wellness. And when you're living on the Wheel of Wellness, sometimes things happen that aren't like fabulous and wow, but because we're like on the ready and we're living on the Wheel of Wellness, we can handle it a lot better because we're fit, we're healthy, we're energized, we're a little less stressed, we've got a pretty good night's sleep, we've worked out, we've ate really good quality whole food to keep us healthy and well and energized during the day, and we can just handle the things that life throws at us a little bit better. So that's the short answer about who I am, but I wanted to like dive right into today's subject because it's super, super trendy. If you were with me on Sunday night, we talked about different mistakes that people make when starting a diet, and one of them is kind of trying these trendy diets and trying more than 1 or 2 or 3 of them at a time, and how that can misfire. But there is a diet trend that is very trendy right now, which is going gluten-free, and I think a lot of people do it and they don't understand why they're doing it, and they do it wrong, and then there's people that really don't have to do it, but they want to do it, but they don't know why they're doing it. And then there's mistakes that people make because they don't really understand what gluten is, what it's doing, what it's not doing, and I don't know. So I'm just going to break it down in layman's terms. There's tons of scientific information on the internet and in books about gluten and gluten intolerance and celiac disease, and it's very scientific, but I'm just gonna like give you the like super short-term cliff notes, like what the average person needs to know. So what is gluten to begin with? Gluten is a protein that is found in wheat, rye, barley, and sometimes oats. Not all oats. Actually, I think oats are inherently gluten-free, but they're processed in plants where they get contaminated with wheat products. And so that's why you, if you are one of the people who really needs to watch the gluten intake, you want to make sure that if you're eating oats, it does stay gluten-free. But most of us know that it is in wheat. So it's a protein that is in wheat. All wheat has it. It doesn't matter if it's a whole wheat berry or a very processed wheat that you would find in like Wonder Bread. All wheat has gluten in it: wheat, rye, and barley. And so yes, beer can have gluten in it if it doesn't say gluten-free. But this protein that is in the wheat is digested, obviously, in our stomachs and our digestive system. And sometimes it's very hard for the body to process the gluten, the protein of the wheat. So if you are a celiac or you have celiac disease, your body does not process it and you get very sick right away. And you are someone that this conversation probably doesn't apply to, because you need to just 100% not have any gluten whatsoever, and you're already working with your doctor and you know what you should and should not be doing. And someone that has celiac disease, they have to even be careful that the medication that they take or the lipstick that they put on does not have gluten in it. So celiacs, they know that this is a very different conversation for them. But it's important for you to recognize and understand a little bit when someone says, oh, I have celiac disease, I can't have gluten. Like if that person comes to your house, they cannot have gluten. So it's in things like soy sauce, it's in a lot of salad dressings, things that aren't breads and muffins and cakes that we typically associate with having gluten. So a celiac cannot process the gluten whatsoever, or the body cannot break down that protein inside of the wheat, the gluten, and they get very ill right away. So that's celiac. And then there are people who have a wheat allergy or a gluten intolerance. And most people have a little bit of a gluten intolerance, especially in today's day and age. And I'll get to that in a second. But when you have a wheat allergy or gluten intolerance, when you consume something that has gluten or maybe too much gluten, you can get fatigue, you can get a headache, but most of the time what you get is a little bit of an irritable bowel, a stomach ache, or bloating. Bloating is like a big one for a lot of people. And that might be a very mild intolerance, but you probably know if you're one that has this very mild intolerance, when you eat a big bowl of pasta or you have a lot of bread or rolls with dinner, your stomach puffs out, you get bloated. And most likely that is caused by the gluten and your body having a difficult time breaking down the protein of gluten that is found in the wheat. So we have the intolerances, we have the allergy, we have celiac disease, and then there's another classification of people who have autoimmune disorders, and that's someone like myself. I have Hashimoto's thyroiditis and I have rheumatoid arthritis. And a lot of the, even though Hashimoto's thyroiditis isn't the thyroid, and arthritis is like system-wide, the rheumatoid arthritis is like a system-wide disease, the gluten in our guts and having a hard time processing exacerbates autoimmune disorders like what I have, Hashimoto's and rheumatoid arthritis. If you have one of those diseases, it's a conversation for you to have with your doctor. I'm not a doctor, so you should have it with your doctor, but I've had it with my doctor, and I happen to know that avoiding gluten does my body really, really well, especially with having the Hashimoto's thyroiditis and the rheumatoid arthritis. It makes me a little bit more sensitive, and I have far less pain and discomfort and everything by avoiding gluten. So those are kind of the classifications of people who should avoid it altogether: celiacs, maybe a little bit of the autoimmune people, and then people that just have a little bit of intolerance. And so I just want to stop here for 1 second and explain, if you wanted to write me a question, how do you do that? And so I have to pop open this other window so I can tell you how to do it. So if you wanted to ask me a question, let's see if I put this on right now, I'll probably hear myself twice. There we go. So if you wanted to ask me a question, if you take your cursor and you hover it over the screen that you're watching me on right now, in the bottom right-hand corner, it will say watch on YouTube. And if you click on that, another screen will open up and there will be a chat on the right-hand side. And I'm just typing in a little hi so you can see it. So that's where the live chat will go. And I will periodically pop back over to that area to see if there are any questions. So if a question comes up, feel free to type it over there and I'll check it out in a minute. So when we talked about people that have gluten intolerances, you eat a plate of pasta and you get a bloated stomach. Why is that happening? Do you have celiac disease? No. Does that mean you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis? No. Why is it happening? Well, modern wheat that is grown these days is different than what was grown, say, when our grandparents were growing up and eating the food back then. So over the course of the last 40 to 50, 60, 70 years, the farming, the agriculture department and all of the farmers and everything have been trying to grow wheat that is more abundant, that is hardier, that is disease resistant, that is weather resistant, that grows a fatter wheat berry so they can get more product out of it. And so they've taken those heirloom types of wheats that our ancestors had, and they have manipulated them through either genetically modifying the seeds or other ways of modifying the crops. And what that has produced is a wheat that is much harder for us. Our bodies haven't changed, but the wheat has changed, and our bodies cannot digest the protein that is found in that wheat berry, that gluten. And so that's one reason why, you know, you can go to Italy and eat a ton of pasta and lose 5 pounds, you know, because you're walking everywhere to burn the pasta off, but you don't suffer any discomfort or anything like that. But then you come home and you eat some pasta at the Olive Garden and your belly blows up. And typically in Italy, in France, in Europe, they are still using the ancestral wheat and growing it the way that we used to, you know, way back when. But now in modern agriculture in the United States, unfortunately, GMO, et cetera, they have modified the seed and our bodies have a hard time digesting it. So that's one way. And then the second and third way is how the wheat is processed. So it's when it's growing, it's typically sprayed with pesticides that have chemicals in them that don't mix with the chemicals in our body or the makeup of our body, and our body rejects and has a hard time digesting the gluten. And then once it is going through some type of processing in a manufacturing plant somewhere, sometimes they isolate. I know this is getting scientific, but they take the gluten and they take the wheat and they isolate the protein, the gluten, and mix it with some other stuff because they're trying to get this processed product and whatever. And basically what it just all boils down to is that our bodies are not made to process that wheat, and it's very hard, and our bodies can't, and so they backfire with bloating, stomach aches, headaches, fatigue, weight gain, etc. So that's the boring science stuff. I know. Let's take a breath. Let me make sure there's no questions over there. Okay, cool. But if you have a question, feel free to type it over there. So what are some mistakes that people make when going gluten-free? There's so much information. I had to write it down. Okay, so the first mistake that I see is that people swap a gluten-free processed product for a gluten-filled product. So let's take pasta, for example. So spaghetti or any type of pasta is made with semolina flour and water. Just basically those two ingredients, semolina flour and water. and you say, okay, well, I'm going gluten-free. I am going to switch to this gluten, it says gluten-free pasta. And then you look on the back of the container of the pasta, and remember, the regular pasta had 2 ingredients, semolina flour and water. You look on the back of a package of gluten-free pasta, and there's like 4 different types of processed flours that are gluten-free, but processed nonetheless. So it's like a rice flour, potato starch, a garbanzo bean flour. And then they mix together some sugar and maybe a little bit of fat and a little bit of natural binder like guar gum or carrageenan, and you come out with these ingredients. There's like 8 different ingredients, and it doesn't taste that good, and it's way more processed, and it has sugar in it, and if you weren't a celiac, you could just have the pasta with semolina flour and water, and it's almost a little less processed product. And I'm not saying I want you to go out and eat tons of pasta, because again, it's made with modern wheat, and it's not, our bodies aren't digesting that either. But that's where the mistake is people think, oh, well, this pasta is gluten-free. I'm going to switch for this, and ends up being more processed. The other thing that happens is, let's just say you're not even a muffin eater, but you go someplace and you see that it says, oh, gluten-free muffin, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to have that. And in order to make that gluten-free muffin taste palatable to us, they add a ton of sugar to it, a ton of fat, and all of those processed flours that are gluten-free. And so you're just seeing, it's like neither one is a great choice. So that's like the biggest thing that I see, is that people switch from a gluten product to a gluten-free product that is worse, way more processed, filled with way more sugar, and just neither of them are a good choice. Which leads me to the second thing that kind of blends into the second mistake that people make, and that is thinking that gluten-free muffin is healthy. Oh, it's gluten-free, it's good for me. Well, let me give you a list of some foods that are also gluten-free, and you tell me. The mistake is that people assume that gluten-free is healthy. So here's a list of some foods that are also gluten-free, and you tell me. Well, you can't tell me. Well, you could if you're on the little chat. Remember, you can like scroll over to the right corner, and it says watch on YouTube, and another screen opens up, and you can type a question. Okay, so movie popcorn, gluten-free. Cotton candy, gluten-free. French fries, gluten-free. Tortilla chips, gluten-free. And any nachos, gluten-free. Stuffed potato skins stuffed with cheese and sour cream and bacon, gluten-free. Jelly bellies, gluten-free. So you can see that just because something is gluten-free does not mean that it's healthy. And thanks to commercialism, you can walk into any store, and whether it's 7-Eleven or your Whole Foods, and you'll find like the worst product ever, and with a big old gluten-free stamp on the side, and that's like a sales tool. You think, oh, it's gluten-free, it's good for me, I'm going to get it. It's not. It's a big mistake that people make. So be careful of that gluten-free sticker. It doesn't mean that it's all that it's cracked up to be. So what do? If you can't rely on the sticker, and you can't rely on a substitute, swapping one for the other, what do? So, and one of the main reasons that I want people to switch to gluten-free eating is that I want you to have a flat stomach. I don't want you to be bloated. But naturally occurring gluten-free food is typically more whole and far less processed than the other types of food. And so when we eat far less processed foods that are in their most natural state, we tend to have better health, more stabilized moods, and stabilized blood sugar levels. and more stabilized weight. So what does that look like? So I, 4 years ago-ish, decided on a whim that I was going to go gluten-free for 2 weeks because it's a long story. It's on lots of other videos, but I never ever went back because the benefits, the immediate benefits that I felt in the first 3 days, in the first 7 days, excuse me, and in the first 2 weeks of doing it were so great. I thought, I'm never going to go back and eat gluten again. I'll come back to that because I did go to Paris. But the benefits that I started to feel when I eliminated gluten from my diet. Now, remember, I'm not a celiac, so I didn't have to be careful about the makeup I was wearing, or, you know, if the medicine that I was taking had gluten in the capsule. I don't have to worry if it's in the salad dressing, because I'm not a celiac, but I do have the autoimmune disorders, and I did have a lot of other things. I had stomach aches, like a lot of stomach aches, and I had acne, like really bad acne all over my neck. See, my skin is so good now you can't even see it. I had really bad acne. I didn't really have headaches, but I was bloated a lot. I was really bloated. I had stomach aches. I had really bad acne. And these things cleared up within days for some of them. And like the acne, like in 2 weeks, like gone, like remarkable. I always thought, oh, you sweat a lot, you're just sweating, and that's why you have acne. No, it was from what I was eating. So what did I do? So I didn't want to be that one who switched from gluten-free pasta, or from regular pasta to gluten-free pasta, because I knew that that was just going to set me up emotionally to still crave pasta. I just don't want to have pasta. It doesn't, nothing, I do not feel good when I eat food like that. And I don't need to keep craving it or keep trying to replace it. It's just not part of my lifestyle anymore. But there's lots of wonderful, wonderful things that are. So I want you to choose naturally occurring, gluten-free, whole, unprocessed foods. So those are things, and sometimes I'm surprised that people don't realize what has gluten and what doesn't have gluten. So I told you the things that do: wheat, barley, rye, and sometimes oats. So yeah, I don't eat muffins. I don't eat muffins that are regular muffins, and I don't eat gluten-free muffins. But I eat things like rice. I love rice. I love black rice. Because people are like, well, how am I going to get my carbohydrates? How am I going to get my carbs? Trust me, there's tons of ways to get carbs. So rice, sweet potatoes, quinoa, corn tortillas, oats. And then you're thinking, corn tortillas, wait a minute, she just said tortilla chips. Well, I was making the point that tortilla chips are gluten-free, but I'm not going to eat tortilla chips every single day because they're processed and fried in oil. But occasionally a conscious indulgence, that is a gluten-free example of a conscious indulgence that I might have. But there's plenty of gluten-free options that are naturally occurring. So like I said, those kind of starchy vegetables, spaghetti squash, you know, those types of things. And once you start to make those swaps and you start to see and feel how good you look and feel, and then you like kind of go back over and have a plate of pasta, or have, you know, a grilled cheese sandwich or something, and then you take notice of how you feel, making these choices towards naturally occurring gluten-free foods becomes like way easier. I just want to pop over and see if there's a question. No, you guys just never have questions for me. That's okay. So, so that's the choosing the naturally gluten-free things. So then, but you might say to yourself, well, Cassie, I'm not a celiac. I don't have an autoimmune disorder. I don't think I'm gluten intolerant. I mean, sometimes I get a headache and sometimes I get bloated, but it's not that big of a problem. But I do still want to live a healthier, wow life. What can I still have gluten? And the answer is sure. Of course you can. If you don't have any of these issues and you still want to have some gluten, you absolutely can, but start to pay attention to where you're getting it from. For example, if you're going to eat bread, you want to start choosing breads that are, they can still have wheat in them, but you want to look for sprouted grains. So things like the Ezekiel brand or Food for Life brand of food. They don't have all the processed like potato flour and all that kind of stuff in them. They take like the artisanal wheat and they make it sprouted. Oftentimes it's organic, and those types of wheat products are much easier for our bodies to digest than the highly processed ones. So you want to look for high quality wheat, and then also try some of the fermented type gluten products. So those are things like sourdough bread. I mean, I'm not talking about going and getting like some, plastic bags, store-bought sourdough bread, but find a baker in your city who makes real, and usually you can find these at the farmers markets, and they're baking really high quality sourdough bread. So that gives you the fermentation that occurs in sourdough bread, which is actually really good for our guts, the place that is responsible for digesting all of this gluten. And a truly true good fermented sourdough bread can actually be a really amazing thing. And as a little side note, if any of this is like interesting to you, there is a docuseries on Netflix called Cooked. It's by Michael Pollan. Cooked, Cooked, and there's 4 episodes. They're each an hour, and they talk about the 4 different elements and how they occur with food. And so there's one all about gluten. It's amazing. So anyways, I'm going to leave you with that. If you're thinking to yourself, I really want to start eating healthier, I want to start incorporating real food into my diet and less processed foods, please look at the link that I have underneath this video about getting on the WOW lifestyle program, the WOW Life Nutrition Program, and the next cycle starts on January 15th. It's amazing. I can't say enough good stuff about it. There's my husband. He's waving at me. Yeah, you guys should see that. That's pretty cool. So anyways, you guys have a great rest of your day. Let me pop over there real quick, make sure there's no questions. You're good. Please check out the link below. Share with your friends, grab a friend. Starts on January 15th. And if you ever have any questions, shoot me an email, reply back to anything. I'm everywhere. I'm on Insta, Facebook. You can find me. So with that, have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.